Hi everyone, my name is Tolitz. Welcome to my YouTube channel, which is all about trying to help you practice and improve your English language skills. In today's video, I'm going to talk about modals of obligation. So please stick around and amplify your learning of modals by watching this video. First, let me discuss very briefly the word obligation. What is an obligation? An obligation is something that someone is required to do. An obligation is a necessity or something you have to do. When you have no choice, you can use the modals must, have to, and the verb need with an infinitive in order to express obligation. Later, I'll explain why need and need plus infinitive like need to tell is a main verb, not a semi-modal. For now, what you need to know is that need plus infinitive like need to tell can be used as an alternative to semi-modal need. In the positive form, the modals must and have to are used to talk about obligations. I must get some sleep. I have to wear a school uniform. Must and have to are used in these sentences to mean obligation, things that you cannot choose not to do, or things that are very necessary to do. Look at the first example. The modal must expresses obligation, particularly personal obligation. I must get some sleep. As a speaker, I express what I think is necessary. I believe it's necessary that I sleep to become fit and be ready for the next day's school. I use the modal must for more personal opinion about thing I believe is important to do. The obligation comes from me and my feelings. That's why it's called subjective obligation. Others don't consider the modal must as real obligation because the obligation doesn't come from the outside, rather from the person himself or herself. The obligation is not imposed from the outside, like a law or person in authority. In the second example, the modal have to also expresses obligation, but the obligation comes from the outside. I have to wear a school uniform. The obligation doesn't come from me, rather from the outside, the law, school rule, or school authorities. I'm required to wear a school uniform. It's not me, rather the school authorities who say it's necessary that I wear a school uniform. This is the reason they consider modal have to as objective obligation. The modal have to is objective as it expresses obligation which is obliged by an outside force like a law, school rule, or school authorities. I have to wear a school uniform because the school rule or the school authorities say so. Take note that must is rarely used to mean obligation in spoken English. In spoken English, using must will make you sound too formal and a bit strange. Must is mostly used in formal or written English. Take note that I'm only referring to modal must to mean obligation. Of course, there are other uses of must, that's why you'll hear it a lot in spoken English. Again, must is mostly used in formal or written English. The native English speakers use have to more often in conversation. Using have to when you're speaking will not only make you sound correct, but also natural. I mentioned in my previous video that simple modals like must is uninflected, meaning must doesn't change its form. Also, its main verb like get is never inflected. It also doesn't change its form. We don't say gets, getting, or got. Here the main verb get is a bare infinitive. A bare infinitive is a verb without to. Get is from the infinitive to get. The phrasal modal have to is different because it's inflected, meaning it changes its form just like any other verb. It changes in form to express number, singular and plural, and tenses, present, past, etc. Have to behaves like ordinary verb that follows usual rules for verbs. I have to wear a school uniform. Some of you are probably wondering why the singular pronoun subject I takes the plural modal have to, not has to. In order not to complicate things, what I can say for now is that pronoun I is an exception. Except for linking verbs am and was, the singular pronoun subject I takes plural verb. I have to wear a school uniform. The subject pronoun I is singular and the phrasal modal have to is plural. For linking verbs am and was, the rule is straightforward. I'm a teacher. I and am are both singular. If we change singular pronoun subject I to she, we also change have to has to. She and has to are both singular in meaning. If we change she to we, again we'll use the plural have to. We and have to are both plural in meaning. The phrasal modal have to is also conjugated to indicate tense. We can change have to had to. I had to wear a school uniform. We can actually use have to in all tenses. The negative form of must is must not or mustn't. The negative form of have to is do not have to, or contracted form don't have to for plural, and does not have to, or contracted form doesn't have to for singular. Take note that must not is completely different in meaning from do not have to. Must not still indicates obligation. Do not have to no longer indicates obligation. Do not have to indicates that something is not compulsory. It also indicates a choice. Again, do not have to indicates a choice, not obligation. Must not means it's not allowed or forbidden or it's a bad idea. For example, if you are in a conference room and there's a sign, you must not smoke here. It's necessary that you must not smoke in the conference room. Smoking is not allowed in the conference room because it's harmful to a person's health. You must not eat too much chocolate. It's a bad idea to eat too much chocolate. It will make you sick. Do not have to means that something is not necessary, something is not compulsory, that you don't have to do it, but it's fine if you want to do it. It's not an obligation, so you still have a choice. I don't have to finish the task today. Well, I can finish the task today, but I can also choose not to. Or maybe I can leave it for now and continue doing it later. There is one more thing I want to point out because in my previous video, I mentioned that modal verbs do not occur with each other, that double modals isn't acceptable in standard English. There is an exception to that. There are phrasal modals such as have to that may be preceded by modals may, might, and should. Look at this. I may have to wear a school uniform. I might have to wear a school uniform. These modals that occur with each other are acceptable. Again, phrasal modals such as have to may be preceded by modals may, might, and should. Remember this exception to this rule against double modals. Similar to negative modal, do not have to, the modals should and ought to also indicate a choice. So should and ought to are not modals of obligation because you still have a choice. He should get some sleep. I can also say he ought to get some sleep. Ought to has the same meaning as should and is used in the same way, but ought to is less common and somewhat more formal. The negative form ought not is often used without to. Here the use of should and ought to is an advice. I think it's best that he gets some sleep, but it's not an obligation, so he still has a choice. He should study hard if he wants to get excellent grades. He ought to study hard if he wants to get excellent grades. I don't think he needs to study hard if he doesn't like studying hard. I only give him an advice. He has a choice if he wants to study hard or not. You should or you ought to means the person has a choice. I'm only giving an opinion or an advice. Again, you can't use should and ought to talk about obligations. In my previous video, I mentioned that need is a semi-modal because in some ways it's like a modal and in other ways like a main verb. Take note that we use the semi-modal need mostly in the negative form to indicate that there is no obligation or necessity to do something. We use it to show that there is no obligation. Look at this example. You need not know the names of the players. Needn't is the contracted form of need not. Take note that the positive semi-modal need is not common and it's only used in formal contexts. Even in writing, there is almost always a negative word like no one, nobody, and nothing, even if the verb phrase is positive. For example, nobody need know the names of the players. No one need know about it. These are sentences that indicate no obligation. Look at the verb phrase need know. It's positive, and before it we see a negative word, nobody or no one. It's kind of confusing because the semi-modal need has no past simple form. When using the semi-modal to mean no obligation in the past, we place did not or didn't before the semi-modal need. You did not need know the names of the players, or you can have the contracted form, you didn't need know the names of the players. Take note that the semi-modal need, like the simple modal can, is not inflected. Its form does not change. A suffix s isn't attached to it, even if the subject is singular. In other words, it doesn't behave like an ordinary verb. Need is a semi-modal because it can act both as modal and a main verb. We know need as a semi-modal. How about need as a main verb? You don't need to know the names of the players. There's no semi-modal here. Look, need in this sentence is a main verb because it's the head of the verb phrase, and to know the names is what experts call complement. What is interesting is that we can use need plus infinitive, such as need to know, as alternative to semi-modal need. You need not know the names of the players. You don't need to know the names of the players. Both of these sentences express no obligation. In these sentences, the meaning is the same for semi-modal need and the main verb need plus infinitive. It's time to take a quiz. You can pause this video if you need more time. The answers will be shown on the screen so you'll be able to check your answers right away. Let's begin. How's the quiz? Did you get a perfect score? Don't worry if you missed some items. You can always go back to this video until you master everything about modals. In my next video, I'll discuss the modals of prohibition. Thank you very much for watching and learning with me. Please don't forget to subscribe. Bye.